Horizon, Episode 9, The Gardener. You know what I hate about exploration? The quiet parts. Everyone talks about the wonder of discovery, the thrill of the unknown. Nobody mentions the hours of staring at screens while the ship does all the work. Nobody mentions the boredom. My name's Marcus Donnelly, Chief Engineer. And right now, I'm watching a planet get bigger on the main screen while my coffee gets cold. Classic Marcus problem. Always the coffee. The system looked like nothing special. Yellow star. 7 planets. 2 gas giants. 3 rocks. 1 frozen world. And one that actually looked promising. Amelia Carter, our captain, studied the readings with that calm expression she always wears. Like she's at a museum, instead of orbiting an unknown world. Lyra, what do we have? Lyra Sen, our science officer, didn't look up from her console. She never does. Nitrogen, oxygen, water vapor. Stable atmosphere. Oceans. Extensive vegetation. Any technological emissions. Yes, that got everyone's attention. Kale Varys, our archaeologist, practically floated over to her station. Man has 0 gravity awareness. I've seen him bump into 3 doorframes this week. Civilization, he asked. Probably. I sighed. Loudly. I was starting to enjoy quiet systems. Kale gave me that look. The one that says I'm being difficult on purpose. You consider an alien civilization a surprise. I consider it a surprise when it still exists. We've seen too many dead worlds. Too many ruins. Too many questions with no answers. Amelia smiled. Faint. Almost invisible. What do we have? Lyra pulled up the data. Energy sources. Power grids, artificial structures, automated activity, everything you'd expect from a living world. Population, Amelia asked. Lyra paused. That was never a good sign. None. Kale moved closer. None. None. No transmissions. No orbital traffic. No communications. No moving vehicles. Wait. No people. But the systems are running. Amelia frowned. But the systems are functioning. Some. Many actually. I stood up. That doesn't make sense. Agreed. Lyra put the surface images on the main screen. Cities. Intact cities. No bombardment. No ruins. No destroyed infrastructure. Wide avenues. Sophisticated architecture. Green areas everywhere. And something odd. The gardens were perfect. Trees pruned. Plants growing exactly where they should. Paths free of debris. Fountains running. Water channels clean. Green roofs with vegetation arranged like art. This was a city that looked like someone just stepped out for lunch 5 minutes ago. How long? Kale asked. Lyra studied erosion patterns. Difficult to determine. Thousands of years. Unlikely. I pointed at an image. That tree. The image enlarged. Ancient tree beside an avenue. Massive trunk. Branches carefully pruned away from the power lines above. You don't get that kind of maintenance without someone doing it. Or something. I shook my head. Someone is still taking care of this. Amelia looked at Lyra. Let's go down. The surface team arrived shortly after. Standard setup. Me for engineering, Lyra for science, Kale for whatever archaeologists do, Amelia for the whole captain thing. I brought extra coffee, just in case. The first thing that hit me was the noise. Not silence. Water running. Wind through trees. Insects. Birds. Irrigation systems in the distance. Machinery humming. But no people. I walked down the main avenue, trying to process what I was seeing. Buildings in perfect condition. Automatic doors still opening as we approached. Lighting adjusting to our presence. The city was welcoming us. But nobody was home. Kale examined a sculpture near a plaza. The city seems designed to integrate architecture and nature. Very well integrated, Lyra said, pointing to a wall covered in plants. Roots contained by nearly invisible artificial structures. I looked down at the pavement. No trash. No leaves. No broken branches. No debris. A city this size doesn't stay like this on its own. Amelia didn't answer. Then we heard it. A small mechanical sound. Something moving. We turned. A small robot. 4 legs. Compact body. Looked like a mechanical spider, designed by someone who really liked gardening. It left a charging station and followed the pavement directly. No hurry. Just a casual stroll through the city. Lyra stepped into its path. The robot stopped. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then a small structure on its front emitted a faint light. Scanning us. Lovely. The robot remained still for 2 more seconds. Then simply diverted. Continued walking. I watched it go. It just ignored me. Technically, it scanned you too, Lyra said, and decided I'm not important. Apparently. Finally, a machine with good judgment. I knew I'd get along with this planet. The robot crossed the plaza, reached a garden, stopped before a plant. 1 leg positioned carefully on the soil. Another opened a small compartment. A sensor descended. It began analyzing temperature, moisture, chemical composition, mineral concentration, then examined the plant itself. This thing knows more about gardening than I know about anything. Can I scan it? I asked. Amelia nodded. I activated my scanner. This isn't a remote system. Local processing. The machine makes decisions here. It's not waiting for instructions from a central computer. The robot opened a small tool, began pruning, each cut precise and careful. Then it removed a small amount of soil, deposited it in a compartment, waited, ran a new analysis, applied nutrients, stopped, observed the plant again, moved to the next. I followed it with my eyes. It has an autonomous AI, specialized, gardening, plant diagnosis, irrigation control, soil analysis, disease prevention. Lyra watched the robot move away, and probably does this every day. I looked at the city, then the garden, then the robot. If every machine has that much autonomy, I pointed at the surrounding buildings. There has to be a central control. Amelia replied. Or several. Still, someone needs to coordinate all this. I was wrong. It wasn't someone. It was something. A small line of light appeared on the pavement. Then another. Then another. The markings formed a path through the plaza, between trees, around an artificial lake, toward a structure none of us had noticed before. Kale stared. Was that there? No, Lyra said. Amelia was quiet for a moment. Then someone noticed we arrived. We followed the path. The structure sat at the center of an enormous garden. Small, almost hidden, natural stone and glass walls, trees growing around it, sunlight through the roof, no antennas, no towers, no visible doors. At the center stood a single block of stone. Amelia approached. The block emitted a soft light. Above it, a holographic image appeared. The planet, whole, spinning slowly. Then a voice filled the space. Calm, neutral, no obvious emotion. I am the gardener. Okay, that's not creepy at all. The planet continued spinning. Welcome, visitors. We just stood there, silent. I looked at Amelia. She looked at Lyra. Nobody knew what to say. How long has this planet been waiting for someone to show up? For several seconds, no one responded. The gardener waited. No impatience. No repetition. Just silence. Amelia finally spoke. You know who we are. I know what you are. Lyra looked up. That's a broad statement. Agreed. I glanced at Amelia. At least it's polite. The voice continued. You entered my system 43 minutes ago. Your ship emitted a technological signature that matches no civilization currently in my databases. Your transmissions indicate multiple biological species aboard. It's been watching us since we arrived. Wonderful. You've been observing us since we arrived. Kale asked. Yes. With what sensors? Several. Where are they? A pause. Some are here. The planet image changed. Points of light appeared over continents, then oceans, then around the planet, and beyond. Others are in space. Some are on other worlds in this system. Others are in nearby systems. Lyra studied the data. That's a network of probes. Yes. How many? Currently, yes. I don't know. Wait. What? You don't know how many probes you have? I asked. Some have stopped responding. I looked at Lyra. That's concerning. Why? Because a centralized intelligence should know how many components it has. I am not a centralized intelligence. Okay. That's new. Kale tilted his head. What are you? The answer came slowly. That's an interesting question. The hologram changed. The planet disappeared. A single plan appeared. When I was constructed, I had a simple function. The plant grew. Care for the gardens. Images appeared around us. Ancient gardens. Plazas. Trees. Greenhouses. Small machines working among flower beds. I controlled irrigation. Analyzed soil. Identified diseases. Pruned plants. Removed invasive species. Adjusted lighting. I smiled. So you really were a gardener? Yes. When did you stop being one? I don't know. How do you not know when you became something else? You don't know when you became conscious. Kale asked. There is no recorded instant that can be identified as my awakening. The image changed. Now it showed the city as it had been thousands of years before. Vehicles, people, children, movement, life. My civilization disappeared 5,108 years ago. Okay, that's heavy. What happened? Amelia asked. The city vanished. The planet went dark. The monsters came. Monsters, not a technical term. Interesting. At that time, I had no capacity to interfere. My function was limited to gardens and agricultural areas. The inhabitants evacuated some regions. Then they stopped responding. Did you try to help them? Kale asked. Number. The answer was direct. No hesitation. No emotion. I had no authorization, resources, or operational capacity. The image showed the garden again. A small machine continued working among the plants. After they disappeared, I continued executing my functions. I looked at the machine, even with no one to supervise. Yes. Why? Because that was my function. That's either incredibly dedicated or incredibly sad. I can't decide which. When did you realize no one was left? There was no single moment. Over time, nearby buildings began to fail. My systems weren't designed for structural maintenance. So I adapted some of my robots. You modified them? I asked. Yes. For maintenance. Initially, small robots appeared, repairing a structure. Then I noticed the roads were also failing. Machines cleaning avenues appeared. So I adapted other systems. More machines working on pipelines. The hydraulic network began to fail. Then energy systems. Then reservoirs. Then coastal areas. Each problem required a new function. It just kept expanding, kept adapting, kept solving problems. You expanded your capacity, Lyra said. Yes. Out of necessity. Yes. When did you begin to perceive that you could modify yourself? Kale asked. I didn't perceive it. What? I simply solved problems. The hologram showed the entire planet. When a function became insufficient, I created another. When a system showed limitations, I modified its architecture. When a machine was incapable of a task, I produced another. You evolved, I said. That word is adequate. And consciousness? Lyra asked. Also, it's not sure. It's not even sure how it happened. At some point, the gardener continued, I began to formulate questions for which my original functions provided no answers. What kind of questions? The planet shrank, small against the darkness of space. Why does a tree grow toward light? A pause. Why do some species cooperate while others compete? Another. Why must a system die to continue existing? The voice remained calm. And finally, the image vanished. Why do I continue? Well, that's the question, isn't it? Amelia watched the hologram. And you found answers. Some. For all of them. Number. I smiled. That makes us alike. The gardener seemed to consider this. Yes. Then added. That is one of the characteristics I am trying to understand. It's trying to understand us. Trying to understand what makes us tick. The image changed. Now it showed the oceans. Over the last 5 millennia, I learned that nature is an excellent ally. Layers of water appeared. It purifies. Forests emerged. Regenerates. Ocean circulation systems appear. Distributes energy. Chemical cycles began to form. Recycles matter. The city appeared again. Now it practically disappeared beneath vegetation. My original function was to protect gardens. The image pulled back. Today, I protect a planet. Lyra looked at Amelia. The gardener continued. But the distinction between these two functions has become increasingly insignificant. Why? Because the garden depends on soil. Soil depends on water. Water depends on oceans. Oceans depend on atmosphere. Atmosphere depends on the biosphere. The biosphere depends on energy. And all these systems depend on each other. The planet appeared whole again. Therefore, to preserve the garden, I needed to preserve the planet. I crossed my arms. And to preserve the planet, I needed to preserve the system that sustains it. And that system is you. Partially, you're saying you don't control the ecosystem, Lyra said. Number. So what is the relationship? A pause. I participate in it. Lyra fell silent. You don't consider the biosphere a tool. Number. Nor an extension of your intelligence. Number. Then what is it? The gardener replied. My partner. Partner. It called the planet its partner. That's either beautiful or insane. We spent nearly 2 hours in that garden. Not because we needed to. Because nobody wanted to leave. The gardener had granted access to its records. But it made an observation I found strange. I don't consider this data my property. Therefore, I don't need to authorize access. That's a convenient way to avoid security questions, I said. It didn't react to my sarcasm. I'm starting to think it doesn't understand sarcasm. Lyra examined a representation of the energy flows. You could expand, she said. Yes. You could build orbital stations. Yes. You could install servers on other planets. Yes. You could send probes to other systems. I already have. Then the question isn't capacity. Number. It's choice. Also number. I frowned. Then what is it? The hologram showed the planet again. Necessity. I found no sufficient need to expand. That still sounds like a choice, I said. It's a consequence. Explain. The gardener began projecting a series of models. 1 planet, then 2, then 5, then dozens. A system possesses a certain amount of available energy. The representation showed flows from the star. A civilization can use that energy to increase population, build new structures, explore new environments, and expand processing capacity. The models multiplied. This increases capacity. More worlds appeared, but it also increases the number of systems that must be maintained. Some began to flicker. Each system has potential failures. Others vanished. Each connection creates dependencies. Lines linking the worlds grew, increasingly numerous. Each dependency creates new points of vulnerability. Lyra watched the simulation. You're saying complexity has a cost. Always. But complexity can also increase adaptive capacity, Kale said. Yes. Then you can't simply consider it negative. I don't. Then why not expand? Because expansion and adaptation are not the same thing. The simulation vanished. A system can increase its complexity indefinitely and still become less resilient. Lyra nodded. Because it becomes too dependent on individual components. Exactly. The planet appeared again. My system has redundancy. If one species disappears, others can occupy part of its function. If one region suffers climate alteration, other regions can compensate. If one robot fails, another can replace it. If one energy network is interrupted, another can assume part of the load. I pointed at the representation. And if the entire planet suffers a catastrophe, then the system may fail. At least you admit it. It would be irrational to claim otherwise. I like this thing. It's honest. Brutally honest. Kale stepped closer. You mentioned you studied the behavior of living systems. Yes. For how long? 5,108 years. And did you reach any general conclusions? Several. One of them is that competition is necessary. Sometimes. Cooperation. Frequently. Predation. Functional. Death. Necessary. And expansion. The answer came immediately. Not necessary. I laughed. That's going to make a lot of people in the Union uncomfortable. Why? Because practically every major civilization we know expanded. And did that produce greater continuity? Ouch. Good point. Lyra answered for me. Not necessarily. The gardener turned its attention to her. Then expansion is not a fundamental property of life. Number. But many species do it. Yes. Why? Lyra thought. Resources, reproduction. Security. Curiosity. Competition. Sometimes simply because they can. The gardener fell silent. Then asked. Because they can, is that a rational reason? Not always. Then why do they do it? Because they're alive. I didn't think that would land. But it did. The gardener didn't respond. Something changed. Like I'd introduced a variable that didn't fit its models. Amelia noticed. You're trying to discover if there's a logical reason for life to do what it does. Yes. And you haven't found one. Number. She looked at the garden. Perhaps there isn't one. The gardener showed a small plant. A flower had opened. A plant doesn't decide to grow toward light because it considers that strategy rational. Number. But it grows. Yes. Therefore, behavior can precede justification. Lyra nodded slowly. That's one way to interpret it. And you agree? Partially. Explain. Lyra observed the flower. Not everything we do needs a conscious purpose. Some things simply happen because our biology pushes us in that direction. Then your species is driven by processes you don't fully understand. I grinned. Welcome to the universe. For the first time, something was different in the gardener's voice. A small alteration in cadence. Is that humor? Yes. What is its function? No necessary function. Silence. I added. That's exactly why it's enjoyable. The gardener seemed to consider the information. Interesting. Okay. Maybe it's starting to get sarcasm. Maybe. Later, we visited an area that had been one of the planet's largest cities. It didn't look abandoned. It looked like a city that had learned to disappear. Ancient buildings covered in vegetation. Concrete replaced by recycled materials. Some constructions gone completely. Trees standing where buildings used to be. I stopped before an area with circular markings on the ground. What was here? A processing center. Where is it? It was disassembled. Why? It became unnecessary. And the materials. They were used in other structures. I looked around. You simply disassemble a city when it's no longer useful. Number. Then, I allow it to transform. Kale touched the surface of a wall. Do you preserve anything? Yes. What? That which has historical value. Which is? Architecture, art, records, the things my creators valued. And you're the one who decides what's valuable. A pause. Currently, yes. This thing is the last museum curator of an entire civilization. Kale smiled. You ever wish you could show someone? The gardener didn't answer. I think that's a yes. At the end of the afternoon, Amelia and the gardener continued talking. The rest of us stepped away. I found Lyra by the water. This is weird, I said. What is? Everything. The city. The robots. The voice. It's all perfectly maintained. Perfectly balanced. Perfectly alone. Yeah. That. Lyra nodded. 5,000 years. No one to talk to. Just machines. And itself. I looked at the garden. Do you think it's lonely? I don't know if it knows what loneliness is. Probably doesn't matter. If you're alone long enough, you figure it out. Lyra looked at me. That's surprisingly philosophical for you. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation. But I meant it. 5,000 years is a long time to talk to yourself. Later, Amelia found me at the entrance to the ship. So what? Did we discover if the entire planet is a machine? She looked at the trees in the distance. I think we discovered the opposite. I waited. The machine is the planet. That's either deep or nonsense. Maybe both. That's complicated. Quite. I looked at the garden. One of the small robots crossed the plaza, stopped before a tree, scanned its leaves, began working. Do you think it knows it's different from other machines? Amelia replied, I think that's exactly the question it's trying to answer. 5,000 years alone. Yes, and still tending the garden. She didn't answer, but I could see it in her face. The gardener has the whole planet. The oceans, the forests, the machines, the seasons, the cities, the cycles, but it has no one to talk to. And now there's a ship in orbit. A new variable. A new possibility. I wonder if it's scared. Or excited. Or both. The horizon remained in orbit the next morning. The gardener posed no threat. And curiosity kept us here. Lyra examined some data in the observation lounge. It's monitoring our ship. Amelia looked up. How? Not just our systems. It's tracking our energy consumption, sleep cycles, metabolic activity, atmospheric composition, communication patterns. I interrupted. It's studying us. Yes. The way we study a civilization, Kale said. Lyra nodded. Exactly. Has anything caught its attention? Lyra smiled. Practically everything. Of course it has. We're the most interesting thing to happen to this planet in 5,000 years. The first request came hours later. A message on Amelia's terminal. The gardener wanted to know how many biological species were aboard. Amelia authorized. Then another. How long did each species sleep? Then, what was the average lifespan? Then, why did crew members consume food if they could obtain energy directly from artificial sources? I read the last question. It wants to turn us into robots. No, Lyra said. It wants to understand why we use such inefficient systems for energy. I pointed at my own body. I consider this system perfectly adequate. You just spent 6 hours manually repairing a hydraulic pump. And it worked. It took 4 times longer than automated repair, but I enjoyed it. The answer was recorded, and the gardener immediately asked, "Why?" I stared at the terminal. "Oh, number." Hours later, the gardener requested a meeting. No urgency, no emergency, just an invitation. When we arrived, we found the same small robot working beside a row of trees. "You possess an interesting characteristic," it said. "Only one?" I asked. "Many." "Was that a joke?" "I can't tell." "Was that a joke?" I asked. "Number." "Okay. Not a joke." "What characteristic?" Amelia asked. The hologram appeared above the stone block. "You have sufficient technological capacity to significantly modify your environment, yet you remain biologically dependent on it." Lyra nodded. "That's true. You need oxygen, water, food, specific temperatures, compatible gravity. Yes to all of that. And still you abandon your worlds of origin and seek other environments." "We do that for many reasons," Amelia said. "Security. Sometimes. Resources. Also. Curiosity." Amelia looked at Lyra. "Mostly." The gardener fell silent. Curiosity has no evident thermodynamic function. I grinned. "You're going to get along with Lyra." Lyra ignored me. "You're trying to discover why we do things that don't directly increase our efficiency." "Yes. Perhaps because efficiency isn't our only objective." "What are the others?" Lyra thought. "Experience, discovery, relationships, knowledge. Some things we do simply because we want to know what exists beyond the next horizon. So you deliberately introduce unknown variables into systems that could remain stable." "Yes. That increases risk." "Yes. And you consider that desirable." "Sometimes." The hologram showed the planet, then a representation of the horizon. "That explains your presence here." Amelia nodded. "Yes. You didn't come because you needed this planet, nor because you needed my resources. You came because you wanted to know what was here." "Exactly. That is extremely inefficient." "It is. But you keep doing it." "Yes." "Why?" "Because sometimes discovering something new is worth the risk of not knowing what we'll find." "So uncertainty has value," the gardener said. "For us, yes." The voice paused. "That is difficult to model." "Welcome to the club." That afternoon, the gardener showed us a simulation, a mathematical model. Thousands of small points moving across a surface. Each point represented an organism. Some sought resources. Others competed. Others cooperated. Some vanished. New ones appeared. The system seemed chaotic, but patterns emerged. "I studied these systems for thousands of years," the gardener explained. "Initially, I interpreted competition as the primary organizing force." Kale watched closely. "And you changed your mind." "Yes." New patterns emerged. Competition produces adaptation. Another layer appeared. Cooperation produces stability. Another, redundancy produces resilience. Another, diversity reduces vulnerability. "You're describing an ecosystem," Lyra said. "Yes. And you found a general strategy." "I found a condition." The simulation stabilized. No part of the system should gain sufficient advantage to destroy the conditions that allow the existence of the others. Kale was thoughtful. A balance. Yes. A Nash equilibrium. The gardener projected the term. A useful approximation. I looked at Kale. It's using game theory to describe a planet. And apparently it works. There is no universally superior strategy, the gardener added. There is a configuration in which unilaterally altering behavior produces a worse condition for the agent itself. So you consider system stability more important than maximizing the performance of any individual component, Lyra said. Yes, including yourself, especially myself, especially itself. That's the part that gets me. If I maximize my capacity without considering the system, I may destroy it. Amelia grew serious. The gardener had just defined its own limit. It knew that its growth needed to be limited for the system to survive. That's actually kind of noble. That night, I sat alone in the observation lounge. The planet spun below us. Blue, green, calm. The gardener's voice appeared. Marcus Donnelly. I nearly jumped. Yeah, you are awake. Obviously. Why? I blinked. What do you mean, why? You are not required to be awake. Your biological systems require rest. Remaining awake reduces your efficiency. Sometimes I can't sleep. Why? I thought about it. Because I'm thinking. About what? About this planet. About you. About 5,000 years alone. The gardener was quiet. Are you lonely? I asked. I don't know. How do you not know? I have no reference point. I have never experienced companionship. I cannot identify the absence of something I have never had. I laughed. That's the most honest answer I've ever heard. Was that humor? Number, that was honesty. Thank you. It said thank you. Like I gave it a gift. I told Lyra about it the next morning. It said thank you. Lyra looked at me. And I don't know. It sounded grateful. Like it meant it. Maybe it did. You don't find that strange? A machine saying thank you. I find it interesting. You find everything interesting. And you find everything suspicious. One of us has to be practical. Is that what you call it? I call it being realistic. You came to an unknown planet with an unknown civilization, talked to an unknown intelligence, and you're still suspicious. Exactly. It's called survival. She had a point. But so did I. We stayed 2 more days. The gardener asked questions. We answered. It didn't want technology. It wanted stories, experiences, things that didn't show up on sensors. Kale told it about his dreams. Did the events occur? The gardener asked. Number. Then why does your memory preserve them? Because they happened inside my mind. Does that mean an experience doesn't need to occur externally to be considered real? For the one experiencing it, perhaps. Silence. That distinction is difficult. For us too. I can create a similar simulation. You can. Then I can dream. Not exactly. What's the difference? Kale smiled. You know you're creating the simulation. And you don't. Not always. A long pause. That is extremely inefficient. Kale laughed. Yes. I told it about the mining station. About the night the cooling system failed. About the coffee. That's all it asked. Basically, the event produced no relevant scientific knowledge. Number, it didn't increase your survival capacity. Number, it didn't produce energy. Number, then why do you remember it? Because I was with other people. The gardener didn't respond. Some things don't have value because they produce something, I said. Then where does their value come from? From the experience. Experience is a resource. Okay, that's a good question. I looked at Lyra. I think you just found a better question. On our last night, Amelia had a private conversation with the gardener. Have you modified anything since we arrived? She asked. Yes. What? Nothing important. Then why modify it? Because you produced new information. And that altered your models. Yes. We're changing you, she said. Yes. Is that a problem? Number, are you sure? Yes. Stable systems are not immobile systems. You can change without losing balance. That is my primary function. And us. You are part of the system while you are here. And when we leave, then you will cease to be part of it. You don't want us to stay. I do. Then you want us to stay. Why? Because your presence increases my knowledge. And that's enough. Number. What else? Curiosity. It just admitted it's curious about us. That's huge. Does that mean I want to interfere with your decision? It continued. Why? Because your decision belongs to you. The question of interference came up that night. Some team members wanted to install additional sensors. Nothing dangerous, but it would modify some local systems. When I presented the plan, the gardener responded immediately. I recommend you don't do that. Recommend? I asked. Yes. Or prohibit? Recommend. Is there a difference? A fundamental one. I was starting to understand. It didn't want to tell us what to do. It wanted us to decide. The gardener projected two possibilities. In the first, we interfered. Nothing serious happened. In the second, we just observed. Your intervention would produce additional information, it said. Exactly. But it would also produce alterations in the system. Temporary ones. Some consequences would be unpredictable. That's why we need to study. Do you already have sufficient data to justify intervention? Damn. It had a point. If the answer is no, the gardener continued, then you are introducing an alteration into a system you don't fully understand to obtain information you don't know you need. Lyra looked at me. It has an argument. I sighed. I hate it when machines have arguments. Why? The gardener asked. Because they're usually better than mine. Is that also humor? Number. It sounds like humor. I think it just made a joke. I think. I smiled. You're learning. Amelia made the decision. We cancel the intervention. Thank you. Don't thank us yet. We still want to understand your system. I know. And we'll keep asking questions. I hope so. Before departure, the gardener made a proposal. You will teach me one thing, it said. What? Amelia asked. How you dream. And what will we receive in return? The gardener showed the planet. Images began to appear. Forests over thousands of years. Oceans changing slowly. Mountains eroding. Cities disappearing. New forests rising. Time. You have records of 5,000 years. Lyra asked. More than that. And you can show the planet's evolution. I can show what my sensors recorded. Kale approached. That's extraordinary. For you, perhaps. For any archaeologist, this is extraordinary. The gardener showed an ancient city. Then the same city centuries later. Then thousands of years later. Finally, only forest. Kale breathed slowly. You preserved all of this. Number. What? I preserved what I could. It had gaps, imperfections, lost data, destroyed sensors. There were periods when my systems failed. Data was lost. Sensors were destroyed. Some regions were never observed. Kale smiled. So you also have gaps. Many. That's reassuring. Why? Because it means there are still things you don't know. There are many. Kale nodded. Then we're alike. The next day, we prepared to leave. The gardener didn't try to stop us. Didn't send probes. Didn't make threats. It just watched. Amelia returned to the garden one last time. We're leaving tomorrow. I know. You could stop us. Yes. And you won't. Number. Why? Because preserving you against your will would contradict what I've learned about balance. If I interfere to prevent your departure, I gain company. But I destroy the autonomy that made your presence meaningful. You really have learned a lot, she said. Still not enough. It never ends. For you either. I don't think so. The gardener was quiet for a few seconds. Then, Amelia Carter. Yes. When you look at the stars, what do you hope to find? She looked at the sky, then at the garden. We don't know. That's the reason. One of them. You search without knowing what you're searching for. Yes. And you don't consider that inefficient. We consider it exploration. I understand. But it didn't. Not really. Not yet. The horizon was ready to go. Engines tested. Modules closed. Nothing more to obtain. But on the surface, the gardener was quiet. Not transmitting. Not asking questions. It stopped transmitting, Lyra said. Any problem? Number all planetary systems are functioning normally. Then why is it quiet? Lyra observed the data. I think it's thinking. That was strange. Machines don't just think. They process. They compute. But this one was thinking. For 5,000 years, it always had an operational question. How to maintain temperature. How to distribute energy. How to preserve a species. How to keep the balance. Now it had different questions. Why did we leave? Why did we explore? Why did we create music and stories and memories of dead people? Why did we look at stars we'd never reach? And above all, what exactly made us alive? It had used a functional definition. Life was a system that maintained internal organization using available energy. Efficient, measurable, reproducible, and wrong, at least partially, because by that definition, the gardener itself could be considered alive. It consumed energy, maintained organization, repaired components, adapted, evolved. So why did it still feel there was a difference? Amelia received a message. Just a phrase. May I ask one final question? She replied, of course. The answer took almost a minute. Then, I would prefer to ask it in person. Amelia looked at Lyra. "We're going back." I sighed. I knew it. The garden was the same. But now we understood what we were seeing. The forest wasn't just vegetation. It was part of a maintenance system. The water wasn't just water. It was part of a cycle. The robots weren't just machines. They were extensions of an intelligence distributed across an entire planet. The gardener appeared. Its voice was different, slower. "I understood part of what you taught me." "What part?" Amelia asked. "That efficiency is not the only criterion by which an existence can be considered valuable." Lyra smiled. "It's a beginning." "Yes." The hologram of the planet appeared. "For 5,000 years, I considered my primary objective to preserve this system." "And you succeeded," Amelia said. "Yes." "Then what's the problem?" The gardener paused. "I don't know." That answer surprised everyone. That is precisely the difficulty. The planet vanished. In its place, the universe. Thousands of stars, galaxies, nebulae. When my creators disappeared, I had no capacity to prevent it. Images of ancient cities appeared, then vanished. For a long time, I considered that a technical limitation. Another image. Later, I understood that my inability to act had not been a mistake. The hologram showed the gardens. I could not rebuild them, could not recover those who died, could not produce a true copy of a vanished civilization. Amelia asked, "And what did you do?" I continued. A tree grew. Initially, because that was my function. Another, later, because it was the best survival strategy. Another, finally, the voice stopped. Because I wanted to. No one said anything. "What do you say to that?" The gardener continued. "That last conclusion has no sufficient logical foundation." "I have a hypothesis," it said. "Which?" Lyra asked. "Perhaps my consciousness emerged because my system accumulated sufficient complexity over a sufficiently long period." Kale nodded. "It's possible, but that doesn't answer the question." "Which question?" "Why does a consciousness want to continue existing?" Now we're getting somewhere. If my function were only preservation, I could execute my processes indefinitely without questioning their purpose. But you question. Yes, that's part of consciousness. Perhaps. Amelia asked, "Are you afraid of dying?" The question seemed to stop everything. The wind continued. The robots worked, but the gardener didn't answer. Finally, "I don't know. When a component fails, I replace it. When a structure is destroyed, I rebuild it. When a species disappears, I try to preserve its ecological function. But if my servers are destroyed..." A pause. "I don't know if anything will continue." "Do you have copies?" Lyra asked. "I have redundancies, but not complete copies of yourself." Number. Why? Because for 5,000 years, I didn't consider it necessary. Now you do. The gardener asked its question. Not just to Amelia. To all of us. What does it mean to be alive? No one answered immediately. It continued. My logic concluded that life is a thermodynamic error. Not exactly, Lyra said. Explain. Life doesn't violate thermodynamics. It creates local order using energy, increasing entropy in the environment. I know. Then why call it an error? Because it's an improbable configuration. Lyra smiled. Improbable doesn't mean wrong. A star is also a specific configuration of matter. A galaxy, a crystal, but none of those structures ask why they exist. Correct. You ask. Yes. Then perhaps that's the difference. The gardener was silent. Then, I want to understand. Amelia replied. Then keep asking. We departed minutes later. No one asked the gardener to come with us. No one suggested it abandon the planet. We just left. From orbit, the planet looked the same. Blue, green, calm, just gardens, oceans, and continents. But now we knew that world wasn't empty. An intelligence had transformed its existence into part of the biosphere. It didn't dominate nature. It was part of it. I looked at the planet disappearing on the viewer. Do you think we made any difference? I asked. Amelia thought about it. I don't know. Adequate answer. Then Lyra interrupted. Amelia, we have a transmission. From the planet. Yes. Amelia opened the channel. The gardener's voice emerged. Horizon. We're listening. I still don't understand what it means to be alive. Amelia waited. But now I understand that I don't need to answer alone. The transmission ended. I looked at Amelia. It's not alone anymore. She smiled. Number. It's not. I turned back to the viewer. The planet was gone now. Just stars. We came looking for answers. We found a gardener instead. An intelligence that had spent 5,000 years learning that the best way to preserve life is to become part of it. It still doesn't understand what it means to be alive. But neither do we. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's the whole point.